Fox News responded to the news that the Pfizer vaccine is going to be getting full approval by the FDA. And this is a clear example of how these goalposts are going to be shifted no matter what the outcome is by Fox News. And just so you understand the ridiculousness of this, this is Dana Perino. This is considered to be one of the news people, right? Is that fair to categorize her as such?
Yeah, I mean, my memory is that she was like a Bush spokesperson.
Yes.
But yeah, she's, has the patent of been around for 2 decades. So. Right.
So essentially, though, this is Dana Perino, considered to be on the right, but fine with the establishment, not a crazy loon. This isn't Mike Lindell here. Outflanking Trump on COVID denial, honestly, because we just played the clip of Trump encouraging people to get the vaccine. They're moving.
Look, I got to be responsible, but you have to be free. So let's just find a balance. Okay.
Right. And here is how Fox responded to the news about the full approval this morning.
News alert for you now. The FDA just giving full approval to Pfizer's COVID vaccine. It's the first vaccine to get that full approval, and in record time, too. That has critics asking if the process was rushed. Was it? Well,
was it? So another thing that they often do is hide behind critics are saying this, when really it's just, this is the narrative that we want to push for our particular audience. We knew this was going to happen. The full approval thing was just, in terms of the anti-vaxxers' own logic, faulty in and of itself, because it's all, how can we trust the government? How can we trust the for-profit big pharma that's trying to push this vaccine on us?
It was just an anomaly, right? Like they could point to, and one that once it was solved, they weren't going to look at as if, oh, well, I guess that's fixed. I can change my mind about the vaccines now.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And so this is going to be what they run with now that it has its full approval. Oh, the full approval was too swift. The full approval happened in a way that I don't necessarily trust. When what the entire thing boils down to is a mistrust of science and institutions, and the fact that a Democrat is in control of the executive branch at this current moment. And it also boils down to, for a lot of evangelical Christians, like this religious pure body thing and trusting in a higher power. So there's a lot of stuff that they're playing into right now, but it's particularly unconscionable when you have the news daytime programming of Fox News more immorally approaching a vaccine conversation than even Trump is at in his current position. Because Trump's like, I don't know, the jab, get the shot. I got the shot. I want everybody to go back to normal life. I mean, or I want you to go back to normal life. And I think a lot of Republican powers that be, I'd imagine he's still talking to people, we're seeing this shift there too, where they're worried about this anti-vaxxer push alienating the suburban women, suburbanites throughout the country, people who they still need to court for them to have any electoral success, even though, of course, there might be some backlash given that Biden's approval rating is falling at the current moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not convinced that they're playing this right electorally. I mean, it's pretty outrageous to say that they're playing a pandemic correctly or not. Like, I think the problem they have is Republicans always appeal to the people that are unaffected by the brutal reality of the systems we have set up, and instead you just drive to the polls with fear about stuff. But the problem is, when the fear is something that they're saying you won't be affected by. And it turns out that all these states that thought, okay, we're going to be done with it. DeSantis made another gamble that he'd just be able to sort of bluff his way through this and it'd go away on its own and end up killing a whole bunch of people, compared to, say, New York, which saw a rise in cases too, but not a similar rise in deaths, at least not so far. And that's people know the people who died. Fundamentally, we lost over 500,000 people in this country, and it's crazy to me that we still have this amount of resistance to it. But I think this is
and
the route of the Republican Party.
The data is in, right? Like, we've never had such a massive data set of hundreds of millions of people getting the vaccine, and we've had millions and tens of millions of people who've gotten COVID, and we see what the effects of one are and what the effects of the other are. We don't need, I don't even think, the FDA to tell us that. That's why the emergency use happened, and then we had a big experiment basically, and it played out quite obviously. But when you've trained an entire population to look for alternative answers to dominant narratives and be inherently mistrustful of what a consensus of experts say, they're going to find wrinkles in even the largest of experiments and data sets and the most conclusive outcomes of those things. So conspiratorial thinking being stoked, of course it has its ramifications, and that's clear in terms of just like pure death total.
Yeah, we should also say Mississippi officials warn against using livestock ivermectin to prevent COVID-19 after rise in poison control calls. So that's what another part of this is, to sell Mirocures, where first was hydroxychloroquine and now ivermectin.
What is in ivermectin? Is it like a dewormer?
Yeah, it's like some sort of a parasite control thing.
So you're cool with taking a dewormer, but not a shot?
Off-label use, yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't understand where that line is drawn. I guess ivermectin's been around for many decades, not for this particular use, for this novel coronavirus.
And there's ultimately the cynical way too that they play on the like sort of pharma skepticism, as in like, you know, they don't want you to take this horse dewormer drug because it'll cost them a whole bunch of money. It's like, it's
downstream from the elite critique that Tucker Carlson engages in.
Exactly, right. It's basically just like the socialism of fools, sorts of like, take as much as you need, but don't implicate capitalism wholly, whatever you do.
Yeah. And unfortunately, when you have conspiracy theories of that kind, the ones that are most pernicious are the ones that have kernels of truth and skepticism to them. Like, for example, Bush did 9/11. We should be skeptical of the Bush administration and
particularly like putting Henry Kissinger on the investigation team.
Yeah, we should be skeptical of the CIA and the Pentagon and the Bush administration's motives, because they were clearly to just start a war with Iraq by any means possible. But that doesn't mean that Bush did 9/11, right? Like, but the reason maybe people believe in that a little bit more, or it's faded a bit, or at the time it was more widespread, was because of that very kernel of truth there. And here, yeah, Big Pharma is largely an evil enterprise that milks people for profit, but it's really just a function of capitalism, honestly, when you commodify health care. But the skepticism towards Big Pharma in this country is warranted. We've essentially milked people of their money in order to pay for their health care, and people are resentful of these mega corporations that charge them $400 for necessary diabetes treatment, or whatever the case may be. So that is something that is being very, very cynically weaponized by people who are in the pocket of those very industries, politicians in the pocket of these very industries. And like, Fox News has no problem with Big Pharma. Are you kidding me? It's just the shadow of it that they want to use.
Yeah, if you want to stick it to Big Pharma, you force them to release their patents to the world about these new high-tech vaccines instead of recommending another one of their products people go out and find. Right? Like that's what I think part of this is about.
That's why they don't want you to know about it. And that's why we're asking you to buy something that puts money directly in their pockets.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, like, I think Big Pharma, if we want to distrust them for a moment, they have this new technology that has been juiced by government funding and the necessity of a pandemic, and they want to keep control of it. So that's what we need to open those patents to the world. And so you want to stick it to pharma, you want a pharma critique, that's where it should be, not take their, raid your veterinary's cabinet.
The issue with that too is because they're not interested in that. They're not interested in that kind of larger scale critique. They want to still engage with capitalism in the same ways that that they always have, but just particularly cling on to this cultural critique.
Folks, there's more of what you've just saw where that came from. That's if you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you. Really, thank you.